Hello friends, Disclosure Artist here. Today I'm going to be discussing cosmic disclosure, ufology, and the whistleblowers in it. By that I mean the ufology community, the program Cosmic Disclosure on the Gaia Network, and all of the figureheads involved in the disclosure process and the whistleblowers and all, etc. The first name that comes to mind is Corey Goode. This is I'm probably not alone on that. Over the past few years, we've been enjoying Corey Goode's story about his 20 and back program and the true nature of technology and our interaction with extraterrestrials. Emery Smith, he's been another whistleblower that came forward. He was working in the underground projects in close proximity with extraterrestrials. And David Wilcock, another person, a prominent name in the ufology community. He's part of Ancient Aliens and has a wide following on his spirituality and the books that he's written. And I actually was privy to meeting all three, Corey Goode, Emery Smith, and David Wilcock at Disclosure Fest, which was an interesting experience. I wanted to go there to make sure that they were flesh and blood individuals. I've never been to any alien con or any convention that centers around alien enthusiasts, as they're called. I'm about truth. I'm not about just drawing, unnecessary spectacle to a very serious subject. So I take it very seriously. Laura Eisenhower, she was at Disclosure Fest the following year that I attended it. So I started to go to these conventions just to see what type of people were there, what type of vibe there was, how much of it was just for profiteering and exploitation purposes versus how much, is all about truth, love, and disclosure, and just kind of gauge for myself with my own intuition. Laura Eisenhower, she's very big on it. This is the great-granddaughter of President Eisenhower, so you imagine she's got some very interesting things to say, and she does. And it was interesting to see her speak in person about spirituality and energy, and she's got a lot to say. Dr. Stephen Greer, the founder of the CSETI program, and he does the CE5 protocols. Very interesting guy. He's been a warrior for disclosure for the last 20 years. David Icke, very interesting individual. What he has to say about reality, the true nature of reality, and reptilian presence here on Earth. John Leer, the son of the inventor of the Learjet, good friends of Bob Lazar. Both of them have very interesting information that they've brought forward, and I think they're both completely legit on the level, and ultimately for the betterment of humanity, getting this stuff out there. The information with regards to Area 51 and what's really going on underneath the continents. I mean, there's oceans and there's civilizations that are underground. Our planet is a honeycomb Earth, and we're just the surface population that isn't privy to any of that. Alex Collier, I thought, was a very interesting person that I learned about 15 years ago, and his story about the Andromedans is very, very similar to Corey Goode's story about the Blue Avians. I just thought that he was an interesting name that I've been tossing around for the last couple of years since I've been doing my own personal research. Another whistleblower that's come forward is Jason Rice. His memories of the secret space program and his 20 and back participation have to do with ultimately serving a cabal agenda, unbeknownst to him. But essentially, movies like Avatar, and where we're going to other worlds and depopulating and serving a negative agenda, this is really going on in our exosphere and in our upper atmosphere and out in the universe. So you know, I know that what he's saying resonates with me, is completely legitimate and truthful, and definitely somebody you should look into. Another notable name, this guy's actually been talking about this stuff for a long time, but I, for some reason, it hasn't been put on my radar until now. It's Captain Randy Cramer. And this guy he's been telling the same story for the last 20 years, as far as I know. And his information corroborates with the other whistleblowers that have talked about the secret space program, the 20 and back program. And it's fascinating to just kind of draw the dots between them all and just see how they all correspond with each other. Another name, Tony Rodriguez. This guy was a sex slave. Unfortunately, he got his memories back, and he's been able to cross-reference them and substantiate that they are real memories. And he's definitely blowing the lid off of what's going on here on Earth, as well as what's going on out there in space. Sgt Clifford Stone. This guy's been on my radar for the last 20 years, ever since the Ufology conference that Dr. Greer threw. And he was talking about all the extraterrestrial species that we've already documented, you know, that are here, that are associating with us, interacting with us on a regular basis. Paola Harris, her experience at Mount Shasta was very interesting to hear, because I understand that, you know, there's places on Earth where if you're on the level and you're ready and your higher self is approved of it, it's a safe place for extraterrestrial or superconscious beings to meet with human Terrans. And they create a Zendra, which is basically a giant cloud of smoke. It creates a common atmosphere for beings of a higher density and higher vibration, and for us to interact with them and be in the same place at the same time. One location is Mount Shasta, and another location is in South America. I'm learning about that right now in Peru. It's fascinating how all these people are sharing the same experiences with the same beings. And the work of Dr. Pete Peterson has absolutely blown me away. Whenever I get the chance, I share the science and the mathematics that he's beginning to point us as a civilization in the direction of. He told us, you know, after the Freedom of Information Acts, there's been a lot of access to this information online, but the average Joe, you know, layman citizen isn't going to have the ability to get into, I mean, he, in his own words, he says you could spend the next 3 lifetimes getting into this research. It's just that far ahead. And if there was anybody that he was ever convinced was an extraterrestrial, it was this guy, and it's Kenneth Shoulders. If you look him up on Google even, you could find his patents are right there for you to try to replicate, look into his math, his science, and his patents. I mean, it's an unlimited amount of information for anybody. So if you guys are trying to get the ball rolling, Kenneth Shoulders, look at his work. William Tompkins, the fact that this guy at the end of his life just threw caution to the wind and just came forward and talked about his involvement with early secret space programs and his involvement with the generating of the craft used for those programs, Solar Warden, etc., and his interaction with Nordic extraterrestrials. It's fascinating. Andrew Bashago, the information he's brought forward about Project Pegasus, time travel, portal use, utilizing children to adjust basically events in history. It corroborates with what Captain Cramer is talking about with regard to the Time Corps and people being of superior intelligence having the authority to take on that role. It's an ongoing temporal war that we're all kind of putting the pieces together. Phil Schneider, I mean, when I first learned about this guy 20 years ago, it immediately resonated with me as truthful. I remember trying to show my parental figure the information, and for whatever reason, either their brain was being put to sleep with technology, or they just were not tapped in enough to the reality of the situation. But you know, his remarks were that his speech was all over the place and that he was losing him, and the fact that he wasn't, you know, a commanding speaker. Well, that's because he's not a public speaker. This guy's a geologist. He's a scientist, just like Bob Lazar. You can tell when they're speaking, they are nerds. They know what they're talking about. They're using rhetoric that only you would use if you're a scientist. And it's obviously, you know, and after he passed, I remember looking up the website and seeing this completely half-assed, basically, attempt to make him look like he's a crazy person that took his own life, when I definitely suspect foul play. Needless to say, another person I think who falls victim to that is Dr. Roger Leer, the guy who became famous for alien implant extractions. And yeah, I think I would have had a very interesting conversation with him if he were alive today. Passed before his time, unfortunately. Peter Maxwell Slattery, I think this guy is 100% legit. The fact that he's had one of those relationships with extraterrestrials where they just telepathically notify him to go outside and he just captures them on film. I think his explanation of DMT was, I've never done it myself, but I think it resonated extremely strong with me as far as human consciousness and understanding our place here in the universe and how a soul is to grow and ascend into something more, etc. It's just one of the most clear and conscious explanations of something that is extremely complex and difficult for a human mind to grasp that I've ever heard. Definitely a guy you want to look into. And another guy you want to look into is Mark McCandlish and his information about the Flex Liner, because he paints a very clear picture about ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, not to be confused with genuine ET craft. Because why do we have these advanced craft? It's because we had the extraterrestrials give us craft that we could then look into and figure out how to make it work for us. And that goes with every bit of technology that's trickled down into society. Whatever we see in the public sector right now is, at this point, hundreds of years behind what they've already got out there and what they're doing. And essentially, what I've been able to put together by figuring out, you know, whose story goes together with whose else's story and how they all connect, that there's a few people you could take off the list and a few that you could keep over time. And it reminds me of, I mean, at this point they're trying to do a giant division in ufology, and it's obviously to distract us because of current events, and they want us to kind of look the other way and not deal with the bigger picture issue. I had at one point a very, very strange passenger in my car. He was dressed in an Air Force windbreaker. He had blue shorts on and just white tennis shoes. He was of average build, and yeah, he was in the Air Force. He claimed to be Air Force personnel, and he claimed to have been raised by Nazis who fled Nazi Germany and went to South America, and he claimed to have had actual experience with mantis extraterrestrials, and basically disclaimed any possibility of there being any humanoid extraterrestrials, and said that that was just disinformation put forward by the cabal or the deep state or what have you. And he said that if the general public knew what extraterrestrials really look like, it would make them too uncomfortable and they're just not ready for it, etc. That wasn't the strangest conversation I ever had, if it weren't followed by the fact that when he got out of the car, he walked away literally like a synchronized PLF, like a program life form. He just had these smooth, kind of exacted motions to get his way down the street. It was really bizarre. And yeah, I think that about wraps it up for my discussion about these guys. Until then, until next time, take care of each other and stay well and stay vigilant.